What's up, world? Welcome back to a long anticipated episode of the Taylor Price Talk podcast season 7 finale. I think I did 5 episodes this season. If you wanted to hear my takes on football, the Niners on YouTube, I did a weekly video series, and that's called Box Score Breakdown. And so after each game, I talked about the team and different themes and storylines across the league. And that was a little bit of a different challenge for me. I wanted to try and do something in the video world and got to learn some different video editing tools and whatnot. So essentially all my football takes went over to YouTube and TikTok for the bulk of this football season. And I didn't really do any long form podcasts. But today, because I have the podcast property and I have some time, I thought I would break some things down, talk about the Niners season and the Super Bowl a little bit, and some other things that interest me outside of football. So some basketball, golf, and life updates. So 7 seasons of doing the podcast. I will admit, it is a emphasis on labor of love. I do enjoy talking in front of a microphone and sharing my takes, my thoughts, analysis, prognostications, predictions. I love interviewing people too, don't get me wrong. But as I get older, as things change in my life, I always waffle or go back and forth debate on should I keep doing the podcast or what space do I have for it? And even this year, I figured video was a medium that I wanted to explore more so than just the podcast, the audio. And yeah, it's a chore to get people to come and listen to a podcast versus a short form video that you can just breeze through really quickly on social. So we'll see about season 8. No firm or bold declaration about yes, we're definitely going to be back for season 8. I will do some contemplation, but I figured for the podcast, I will wrap things up for season 7 and give myself a D-, maybe an F. Not the best of consistency with the podcast, but creatively, it's an outlet that I do enjoy, a format, a place to share things. And so, yeah, I've enjoyed making podcasts for all these years. Definitely go in the archives if you want to check out some interviews. Lots of good stuff in there. But for today, let's talk about the Super Bowl, wrap things up on the football season, and talk some sports. That being said, I'm going to have a sip of water. Hydration is key. And let's dig in. The first thing I wanted to share about is a little topic about creative burnout. And just outside of football in the season, I got laid off from my job, and that was a tough pill to swallow. So that was my last podcast, was talking more about the career things. I do have an update to share. So it was about 4 months of being unemployed and scratching and clawing in the job search market. I do have something to announce on March 19th, so I'm excited about that. But I just want to share a little bit of advice if anyone is finding themselves in a similar situation of being laid off and going through that process. And for me, it did impact my creativity and my willingness or my confidence to create content and get on a microphone. And for me, just having that weekly challenge of can you make a new football content video, I kept going, and that was something I forced myself to do. But I did feel a lot of creative burnout and the struggle of putting yourself out there and feeling like, you still have something to contribute given the complexities of being unemployed and the feelings that come with that. So I just want to call that out, that everybody has their ebbs and flows of creativity where they're feeling super inspired or they're feeling challenged or just wanting to be a consumer and not a creator. And I definitely felt that over the last few weeks and months, especially. But, getting in front of the microphone for me has always been good outlet, good opportunity to sort of put it out there in terms of things that you're thinking about and creating shared experiences through others. So many people have reached out to me over the years and talked to me about things they've heard or whatnot and how it's impacted them. So yeah, just the creative burnout is real, especially going through the job application process. And just want to remind folks that that's totally normal and natural. And good things happen for those that stay persistent and stay open-minded. And I'm happy to share more career search advice things when I announce this next thing. But the biggest takeaway for me is do you, and don't feel like you're alone in this. Definitely feel like you can reach out to people if you need more advice or want to talk more about it. My DMs are always open. So, kicking things off, I will have an announcement on March 19th. Excited to share more, but for now, let's keep that offline and stay, more into the football weeds of things I normally talk about. The Super Bowl is wrapped, and the 49ers didn't win. Moment of silence for that. I got to admit, I'm not over it. I should be, right? I don't work for the team anymore. I am just a interested consumer of the football team and a former reporter, insider, someone who knows the movements or, happenings inside the front office. I thought a lot about this on my run today. What I was going to say about this in particular. Like, why do you still care so much? And I'm almost 40 years old, and I would say 30 plus years of my life have been involved with the San Francisco 49ers. I grew up going to games at Candlestick, and so a lot of my earliest memories in childhood, like really happy moments, were going to games with my family, my dad, and sitting there. So the fact that the team has lost 3 Super Bowls, and I was an employee for Super Bowl 47, moved on and have watched them now lose 2 more as just a regular fan. I think each one it gets more painful, and it's harder because I felt like this time the outcome could have been avoided. So I'll talk more about that in a second, but there's been a lot of close Super Bowls. Game missed field goals, tackle at the 1-yard line, and so every fan base carries the scars of really close calls. And as a 49er fan and someone, like I said, who's been in the mix, the way this one went down, the way they lost to the Chiefs, it just has a different association with it, and it's layered because of the most recent losses in the Super Bowl and whatnot. So that's 3 in a row now, and it's been a week plus or almost 2 weeks now, so move on, right? And definitely it moved on, but there's part of me that still sees podcasts and YouTube videos and tweets, and you're still kind of in that hangover of second guessing or Monday morning quarterbacking weeks after the fact. And it's tough. It's tough, but ultimately the 49ers will rise again, will be good and competitive and fill those Sundays with excitement and optimism. But, obviously the way this went down, there's never one thing that contributes to a Super Bowl loss. Or any loss in any sporting event. There's just so many factors that go into it. And so I bring all this up because if you haven't seen, I did put out a pretty scorching, controversial tweet on Saturday or Sunday morning. And for about 36 hours there, I was getting some critiques on Twitter, aka I was getting roasted alive. And I could say it's probably deservedly so. What I said for me was out of character. I think a lot of my really, and I'll say what I said in a second, a lot of my opinions about the team, I'll say to friends and family, but I won't really put it out there exactly for public consumption. I think there's some strategy into what you want to put out there with your name behind it versus what you say in private. And what I said was that Parag Marathe, who's been there for 20 plus years, he's a C-suite, high-ranking person in the organization. And I'll talk about more in a second. I'll just read the tweet. Parag Marathe is the 49ers chief contract negotiator and salary cap architect while overseeing the team's football analytics department, among other football duties. Football analytics cost SF the Super Bowl. He's been with the team for 23 years, 0 rings, time for a change. And this tweet has been seen by about 54,000 people, so about the size of a whole football stadium. I have about 160 likes and about 120 something replies. Most of them like, "What are you talking about?" and about 30 something reposts, replies saying you're crazy. So kind of a polar opposite opinion. There's like half people liking, half people hating on it. And I'll say this is pretty reckless for me. So my intent going into this was to bring up a point that the overtime decision for the 49ers was informed by the analytics department. And Parag oversees football analytics as part of his numerous football duties outside of salary cap and contract negotiations. And my point here was that the decision-making or the recommendation of the analytics department cost the Niners the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, as we all know, thought the advantage was in the second possession. The 49ers felt that it was a 50-50 split. Their reasoning was basically it's not enough data out there on overtime, the new overtime rule, so it comes down to feel. And the feeling for Kyle and the franchise was that the defense was tired, they were gassed, they needed a minute because they just had a very long drive against Patrick Mahomes. And so going out of the game, my thought was like, why did they take the ball first in overtime? That's peculiar. And the more I thought about it, like Kyle said, he gets an input from the analytics decision, but ultimately it's his call. Like, yes, he is the chief czar of football for the Niners, so we're going to ride and die with his decision-making from personnel to analytics to on-field team management, game management, clock management. But for me, it was like the overtime thing continued to boil over and sort of stew with me. And the more I thought about it and the more I read or heard different opinions, I was influenced or just like biased to feeling like the analytics department should have been firmer that the advantage was the second possession in overtime. Considering it's Patrick Mahomes, they could go for 2 if they scored. We can go through all the scenarios, but my point being, I felt like the advantage was the second. Now, this is just me. My opinion, outside of football, not involved in the game. Just Joe Schmo on the couch, eating chips, watching the game. And then I chatted with some people that worked with at the Niners and just kind of bantering and talking about Parag and different memories. And it just kind of didn't sit well with me. This was like over the weekend and feeling like this guy is involved so heavily in football matters, but never carries any criticism or critique like Kyle or John or Jed. And, candidly, full transparency, I have no dialogue or relationship with Parag. Whenever I interacted with him at the Niners, it was fine. Like, never really had any, axe to grind with him. But my comment is rooted in that experience of knowing him and knowing that he flies under the radar and has had a say in different football matters from back in the day. It was being involved in the reviews of on-field challenges to, analytics and feeding information to the front office over the years and tracking different things and whatnot. So granted, Parag is immensely talented and one of the best contract negotiator, salary cap architects in the league. There's no push for me on that. And I anticipated or wrote this in a way where I said, time for a change. I didn't say he should be fired. I didn't say Parag is the worst at salary cap or the salary cap management is why this team is in trouble. My point was around the analytics department. And the last piece that really made me post this or come up or feel confident enough with this take was, I mentioned consuming a lot of post-Super Bowl content. And I watched the Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce podcast just to hear their take on the Super Bowl. This was sort of like, in my mind, the final thing I wanted to consume. I watched the mic'd ups. I saw the George Kittle, like, lollygagging, joking during the game. I watched all that content. And seeing how Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey were excited about the Niners taking the ball first in overtime, that was a signal for me. That got my antennas up. But just hearing about Travis talking about their analytics department and the presentations that they made over the course of the postseason and the recommendations that they made and the value that their analytics team brought and called out their Frazier, I think is his name, the person in charge of analytics. In my opinion, the 49ers had no such story to tell. Like, I don't think Parag would have been celebrated for his analytics contributions. For whatever reason, he just like flies under the radar. And so to hear the Chiefs talk about or anoint, this is our person and this is who contributed to the decision making, it made me realize or think about, like, why aren't we highlighting the person that contributed, and should they get that same level of scrutiny or criticism for the recommendation that they made. So I posted, or I wrote it. Like, one of the things I do is I write things, and if I feel like it's controversial, I'll save it as a draft, and then I'll decide later on if I want to post it. So I wrote it, saved draft, didn't post it. And I know that Parag is really tight with Jed, and so it would, like, much like Trent Baalke was. These are like original employees that were there when Jed was really, honing into his like progression into CEO and owner of the team. And so I think Parag is pretty much untouchable. And so a lot of people don't even bother bringing him up. Now, again, don't have an axe to grind. Don't feel any type of way about Parag. Again, just rooted in my feeling of frustration about them losing, hearing the podcast of the Kelsey brothers talk about the Chiefs analytics department and how they should be celebrated, and some comment around, like, I guess the 49ers don't have that. And that inspired or encouraged me to post my post. And then, of course, I knew it was controversial, so I didn't send it immediately. But as I sat there and thought more about it, I was like, I post things all the time and that are critical of the franchise, that doesn't have a lot of amplification or growth behind it. Sort of like put it out there and move on. Well, this post over the course of the day started to pick up traction. Like I said, retweets, shares, etc. People were just telling me I was the worst take of the football season, Super Bowl. A lot of like insults and negativity. And I was kind of laughing at it or laughing it off. Like, I didn't think of it too seriously. And then the next day, somebody who I won't even bother naming, who works for Parag, worked under Parag at the Niners when I was there, now works for Leeds United, the EPL team the Niners bought into, where Parag is involved in the front office. Potentially will become like full owner at some point. You get one of those LinkedIn notifications that, like, so-and-so has viewed your profile from Leeds United. And it just kind of got my attention that my tweet, little old me, who's been out of it for a long time now, things that I say still circulate or resonate, or maybe I was in the Leeds Slack channel or the group chat, the text thread, but people were probably unhappy with this take or felt like it was wild or out of bounds. And so, yeah, I'll say a couple things. Like, I don't think Parag is bad at salary cap or contract negotiation. He's always been able to get great deals that are team friendly. Joe Staley, Navarro Bowman, George Kittle, Dre Greenlaw, go down the list. These are just star names that he's been able to sign earlier or get to very team friendly deals. And so Parag is one of the best that he does. No question or argument from me. Time for a change is what I said. I never said he should be fired. I never said he's bad at salary cap. My point being is that the analytics or the decision-making was either not firm enough or ultimately was incorrect. And that was something I felt on February 17th at 10:52 a.m. It's now February 20th at 1:10 p.m. And I did read an interesting post, an article from Bill Barnwell on ESPN, where he talked about just going around the NFL and talking to different analytics team leads, and it's still 50-50 in terms of what was the right decision. So there's no clear cut the 49ers did the wrong thing. Hindsight is like 20/20. They all know. So after the fact, it's easy to point the blame that, the advantage was in the second possession, because the 49ers could have kicked the field goal and stopped Mahomes on 4th and 1 if they were prepared for the zone read. Whatever scenario or whatever you want to play out. I will firmly say Parag did not cost the 49ers a Super Bowl. The overtime decision did not cost them the Super Bowl. It was a big contribution. It's something that Kyle and other teams will learn from, and unfortunately the Niners had to be the guinea pigs. But there's a number of things. Greenlaw getting hurt, the play calling on 3rd and 4, the Niners' ability to react to the zero blitz from Steve Spagnuolo, the Niners not being able to play a lot of variety on defense and being predictable late in the game, and Kyle not trusting Steve Wilks. I mean, all of these factors we can go into it. Deebo Samuel not being able to get open against press coverage from Trent McDuffie. It's all of it. So my tweet was reckless. It wasn't well structured. It was, unfortunately, it was a sensational post that I wish I could take back or have more nuance to it, and go to the podcast format like this to have a conversation about it and really say that the analytics, while unproven, I disagreed with their recommendation. Who am I to make have more value or opinion over them? I'm just someone with a semi-informed view of the game. And, like Parag, keep doing what you're doing. If anything, you will learn from this, I'm sure, and your recommendations for analytics will be more informed as they get to postseason overtime. And for anybody who unfollowed me or took a shot at me on Twitter, it's all good. Like, I've been posting about the team on there since like 2008, 2009, whatever it was. I'll still be following and supporting and commenting about the team from time to time when I feel moved to. But if anything, I think it's important to spark conversation and have some reflection on it. So in my initial thought, it was like, I think the analytics department failed the team and there's some opportunities to make changes. And here I am a few days later saying, posting it in that way was probably a little bit out of character for me. So yeah, I'll walk that back if I could, but I'm not about to tweet and delete. It's more learning from it. And in the future, when I really feel like I have a nuanced point to make, finding the right format and venue to do that. So the Niners have a lot to figure out this offseason. They fired Steve Wilks at defensive coordinator. Brandon Ayuk is going to be the one making contract noise. Is he going to get a new deal? Are they going to trade him? There's a lot to figure out with him. He's probably the player that will be most talked about. But football doesn't stop. And this team is, while disappointing everyone this season, they're still top of mind. The Warriors are out of the mix. The Giants, I don't know what the Giants are going to do. The Bay Area is the 49ers team. And the 49ers, no matter what they do, they will be talked about. So defensive coordinator is interesting to me. It would be wild to see Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel, or Bill Belichick roaming those sidelines next to Kyle. I don't think that will happen. I could be wrong. I just see them going for more of a younger, under-the-radar type, maybe someone with more subservient to Kyle, I think is the key quality there. Maybe it's an in-house coordinator, or maybe it's someone with experience in this Seattle 4-3 scheme that they like to run. We'll find out soon. But until then, there'll be all sorts of new cycles of content creators talking it up. And so, yeah, I don't really have a firm hand on it, other than I think it's someone who's going to play to Kyle's strength as a head coach and leader, and not someone who's going to be potentially challenging or overrule him and compete with him for the lead voice in the defensive meeting room. With Brandon Ayuk, I hope they don't trade him. I know there's going to be some salary cap, roster management, where Prog's going to step in and do the right thing. Shout out to PM. I hope they figured it out with him, because I think he's one of those players that is on the ascent in his career, and you want to keep ascending players alongside Brock Purdy as much as you can. And so if it means making a tough decision with Debo or George or Eric Armstead, whatever that might be, the Niners need to make choices, and hopefully they can keep Brandon Ayuk at a team-friendly deal before he hits the open market. With regards to the drafts, the Niners have 11 picks, I think starting with pick 31, and a lot of needs, offensive line, defensive line. I was just taking a quick peek at Daniel Jeremiah's board and saw Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback from Alabama's somewhere in that top mid-30 range. Just a name like Kool-Aid. But obviously, no, I'm kidding. A player from Alabama as a DB excites me. I think somebody that could be an option for them at the Niners. Of course, take the best player available when you have a strong roster. You can flex into different areas. So plenty of time for that. I think the Niners need to go with a defensive back, defensive line, offensive line. Offensive line probably first and foremost. I just don't know the players that well. So I just went with Kool-Aid as my initial wish list selection. And I'll do my best to sort of, I'm trying my best, I should say, to sort of like wean out of football mode. It's hard. Most football podcasts that I listen to, they're struggling or having the same thing. Like we don't have much to talk about right now, so come back to us in a few weeks. Actually, it's some news podcasts today, so I'm trying to get caught up on current events and become more well-rounded. But yeah, somehow football still, like I said, still consumes a big part of my life, whether I work there or not. It's just something that I grew up on and continues to be a part of my life. So yeah, hopefully the Niners can get a good defense coordinator, get some good draft picks, and bounce back and get off the mat, because they do have a great team. And as close as they came, if they have the right characters, they'll continue to come back and fight for that championship that they deserve and that they're close enough to get. Football has a stranglehold over all of us, too, I should say. I mean, if you look at the NBA All-Star Weekend, just how bad basketball is right now. The star players aren't competing in the All-Star game. They barely get dressed for regular season games. The players want to get paid for the All-Star game. There's just all sorts of messiness happening in the NBA world right now. I don't think I have like a great answer on how to fix it other than less games, which is hard because that messes up records and sort of the historical aspect of pro sports. But it's really important for professional sports to evolve. And looking at baseball and the changes they made to speed up the game and make it more fan-friendly, basketball has to push for innovation as well. So if it's less games, the in-season tournament was an interesting wrinkle. Maybe there's a single-game elimination tournament or some aspect of it that gets more buy-in and stakes, higher stakes. Football is great because the stakes are so high. Limited amount of games, pressure moments, every game matters. Basketball has to find a way because the product in the postseason versus the regular season is night and day. And I think it's important too, if you have a truncated season, to maybe look at what does that look like after football wraps up. The fact that other pro sports are competing against football is just bonkers to me. When football wraps up, that's when pro sports should be really trying to heat up and get eyeballs and captivate the national audience, because right now football is everything in the United States. And then when it's over, we turn to, like I said, news and TV or movies or family time or whatever that might be. That's the right time for basketball to kick off, or for pro golf to have like meaningful events. And so, yeah, I think the NBA All-Star Weekend was pretty laughable. The only thing that I liked out of the All-Star Weekend were LeBron James custom or shoes that he wore. He wore as a new model, but in the Deion Sanders colorway, so like a custom for him. I think those were some pretty nice sneakers. Outside of that, the dunk contest, terrible. If the 3-point shooting contest is the highlight of your weekend, you don't really have much of a product. Outside of that, I think the only other thing I'll probably be paying attention to is not as much, but would be pro golf. So Tiger Woods rolled out his new brand, Sunday Red, and of course had to withdraw from the Genesis Open or Invitational because of his battle with influenza. He got the flu and dropped out midway through the second round. I really like what Tiger's doing. It's an unfortunate thing to see him part ways with Nike, but he has a relationship with TaylorMade, and to build out his own brand, high performance, quality brand mixed with nostalgia of his apparel from his amateur days. I think it's a nice look. There's an appetite for pro golf to have new players, new brands. You look at what Malbon is doing with Jason Day and other pro golfers. I think there's opportunity to disrupt the same old with golf and Nike and Adidas being just pretty basic and simpletons when it comes to fashion on grass or on the links. So, excited to see what Tiger does for the Masters. I want to see him compete, make the cut, and all 4 days of Sunday Red attire, not just 1.5 fits out there. But looking forward to more from that brand and from Eldrick as well. And I think too, just my comment around pro golf is same as NBA. Like, the season should start when football wraps up. And that requires less tournaments, better courses, or just more meaningful moments. I know you have a lot of pro golfers, so you should have a challenger or sort of a AAA league. So all the top players that are, ranked 80 through 250, whatever they are, let them play. And if golf hardos want to watch, tournaments every weekend on the Golf Channel, whatever that might be, let them have those moments. But your best players don't need to be playing every other weekend for 11 months. It feels like an endless grind. So would love to see some coming together of the leagues, whether it's a LIV versus PGA tournament or tour or mini tour. It's just hard to watch pro golf and know that it's a watered down product. The majors will be awesome. Those will feel like real tournaments again. But pro golf has a lot of fixing to do, and hopefully they'll be more open-minded. One of the cooler things I saw in golf recently was the Good Desert Open, and that's a bunch of golf YouTubers playing at night golf in Arizona, and just seeing the creativity of doing just different style of events and mixing and matching of content creators or night golf or whatever those things are. Like, professional golf should be open to testing and exploring new formats to grow the game. Granted, like, the country club dad is not necessarily invested in all that the same way that a 30-something might be, but I do think professional golf is ripe for some disruption, especially given what LIV is trying to do, and the PGA Tour can't just be status quo given these turbulent times. Outside of that, everything's good with me and our family. Like, being unemployed for a couple months here was definitely a rocky patch, but I want to give a huge shout out to my wife, Mary, and our support system of our family, everybody helping out and watching our daughter and contributing and just giving us a lot of encouragement during these times. I couldn't be more fortunate to have an amazing partner and family that supports. And so, thank you to everyone. Our daughter is almost 2 now. So 2 years of just watching her grow and be such a cutie. It's amazing to see where she's at. Right now doesn't like to get her diaper changed, kind of getting into the tantrums of the terrible twos. So we're getting a sneak preview of that. But she's so adorable, so much fun, and really fun to be around. And so I'm really, gonna miss this time that I had with her. Is really special. I got 4-ish weeks left of, really consistent time in daycare, or watching her, I should say. It's a beautiful thing being a parent. And so if anybody is starting a family recently or in the thick of it like I am, just keep going. It's a lot of fun, and I look forward to watching her grow and making her proud as the next chapter of my career continues outside of the family life. So that was a mouthful. A lot of clarifications and teaser announcements and commentary. But thanks as always for anybody who subscribes or listens or just even checks out what I put out there. It means a lot, and keeps me going. So thank you for that, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of this hopefully not too rainy February. Take care. Bye.